You guys, first of all, are very, very welcome. Thank you for giving me some of your time.
So,
I just wanted to quickly put this conversation into context for the viewers and yourselves before we begin. Obviously, the brutal murder of George Floyd on Memorial Day weekend sparked global outrage. We've seen thousands upon thousands of people take to the streets to protest and show solidarity in support for Black lives. In Ireland, the events have triggered an important moment where people are sharing their experiences of racism in this country. Obviously, racism still exists in Ireland. It might not be the same type of institutional racism that we see in other countries, but the problem still exists. Sometimes I feel we're happy to point the finger at other countries instead of looking at our own backyard. I think it was only last month where two teenagers were found guilty of sending awful racist abuse to two former footballers on social media. Even I'm sure you guys have heard of Malcolm X. Malcolm X once spoke about the fox and the wolf. He said that the wolf being your stereotypical openly racist individual, everyone can see it, there's no hiding it. But then you have the sly fox, he shows his teeth, but Malcolm X said that he's pretending to smile. I say another example would be, I say if you're sick, you only focus on the symptoms but not the disease, and you'll always be sick because of that. And I think those metaphors perfectly depict the situation in this country at the moment. With racism, the symptoms are police brutality or fearing for your life, if you're black, or dealing with openly racist people. But in actual fact, the disease is the subconscious bias that I know that we are brought up with. We've been brought up with to carry certain thoughts and bias against groups, against races, against religions. And the only way we can eradicate the disease is to acknowledge that it exists. And I think that's why it's important to have this conversation. And hopefully we can educate the viewers and listeners to encourage them to educate themselves and understand the points of view from the other side. And more importantly, self-reflect, because I know we've all seen on social media, people are putting up, these black squares, and say, okay, my job is done. I'm not racist, but it doesn't work like that. You actually need to make a difference. You actually need to do something. So I think that's where I'm coming at from this conversation, and hopefully it can make some sort of tangible change and people might understand things from a different perspective. I guess then getting straight into it, if we can start even with Nadia, in your opinion, does racism still exist in Ireland, and have you personally experienced it?
yeah, no, it definitely does exist. I've been pretty horrified, I guess, hearing a lot of stories, mainly through social media over the last kind of 2 weeks with other people coming out who live in Ireland. Yeah, and I've kind of realised I've had it a little bit easy. Not that I should have to be kind of thinking of that anyway, but I definitely haven't experienced as much racial abuse as other young people my age who live in Ireland. And yeah, I've been quite horrified because I think a lot of the time in Ireland we give ourselves a pat on the back and say we're really inclusive and friendly and welcoming. But I think we've seen another side to that, and there's still a lot of work to do.
I agree. I feel like I'm kind of the same like Nadia as well. Like I left Ireland when I was 15, so I grew up like with really friendly people. I did have the odd encounter, but more like microaggressions, kind of like it's not really like people being verbal, but little things they say they don't realize that it is racist. So I think I experienced that more than anything. But yeah, like I would say I've been lucky enough not to go through like some brutal encounters because I know people have had it worse than I have. So, but regardless, it still exists and it should be like eradicated in the best way possible.
And then Perry, in terms of with Sari, has there been progress, or is it still the same sort of situation that we've been in?
It's certainly not gotten any better. And I guess if you go back to when SARI started in 1997, we kind of started as a response to a rise in racist attacks and just general racism. But if you think about it, if you go back, it was only ethnic minorities started coming to Ireland. So it's, I would say it's got worse over the years. And, it's for me, there are many aspects of this, but because it's a big problem. But discrimination in Ireland is a big problem. And, we need to counter all forms of discrimination, sexism, homophobia, And I think that we're only going to be able to tackle these issues, and especially racism, if the people at the top embrace this. Then in the mid-2000s, there was a national action plan against racism set up, and it kind of collapsed on the financial meltdown that we had in 2008, 2009, and it just kind of, there was a minister for integration, Conor Lenihan back then. There was a real effort, I would say, to address it and to really promote diversity and integration, which are two other key aspects of this, and to beginning to look at education, which I think is the key. But it'd be very interesting to see what Nadia and Gina think about that and their experience of schools and education in Ireland. In Surrey, we run these anti-discrimination football training workshops in schools, primary schools around the country. And we talk about racism, homophobia and sexism in particular. And we try to target schools and communities where there is a high percentage of ethnic minorities, so there's a good mix of kids. We look at the sort of age of 10 upwards because we think that's an age when the kids can really grasp these issues. And we do things like play games, discrimination games, games of handball or football, where you can show kids how it feels to be discriminated against, and how do you like that? But I think education is a real key to this whole thing, because most schools, we find, don't have the resources themselves to do this. And the other aspect of education is just coming back to the social construct of race, this idea that there are different races and how this came about. There's absolutely no scientific basis for this whatsoever, as we all know. And I think we need to go to unpick this and go into the schools and teach kids where this came from. It comes from the mid-1600s, and it's gone through various different formulas since then. But it essentially was created to empower white people and white societies, and initially through slavery in Barbados, and then in the Americas. And it developed from, it's a long story, but as we know, there have been many transitions and sort of namings of the different groups. But, at SARI, we tend to go for, and we had some athletics meets around this race, human race. That's our take on it, because we feel like, we're all Homo sapiens, we're all in this together, and we need to make the most of it.
Racism is hugely topical at the moment. In terms of, for Gina and Nadia, how important is it for you to speak up personally? And I'm interested to know, as high performance athletes, were you skeptical of speaking out, or it was important for you to say something?
Sorry, I wasn't skeptical. I feel like the mindset behind it being a controversial topic, I just don't have that mindset. There's a lot more things that I feel like are more controversial. Like, I think it being put into like a political category makes no sense, because it's not political. It's just basic human rights and like just morals and common, just common sense in an aspect as well. So I just think I was not really scared about it. I feel like I understand why people would think you should be scared, but I myself felt like it is a necessity. Like, I'm really happy that it has blown in this way, and it's global, so it's not just like in one part of the world. So like, it was a good thing. So I'm glad.
Yeah, I agree with Gina. It's not in the political category, and yeah, it shouldn't be controversial whatsoever. But at the same time, it is something that people don't talk about and feel comfortable talking about. So I guess to one extent, not in the fact that it's controversial, but more in the fact that it's an uncomfortable topic. I was slightly nervous about it, and especially like, obviously it was natural for me to just give Gina support when I saw the off the ball interview. But then I remember the next day I was asked to speak on RT Game On, and I was a little bit nervous just because it is, it's not a controversial topic, but it's something that's really, really, really important, and I wanted to say the right thing. But I guess I'm finding that it actually is really helpful for people like us to speak up, and as athletes, we have maybe more of a voice than I would have thought I did anyway.
Interesting. And I guess then I'm interested to know, I know you guys have said that you were quite lucky in that you hadn't experienced, or you haven't experienced too much of racism personally. For me, for example, when I was growing up, I always felt that the day would come where someone would say something or there'd be an incident. I almost normalized it, as in, it's going to happen. It's fine. It's like, it's fine. They're going to say something or something will happen. So when it did happen, it like rolled off my back. And I suppose, funny enough, one of my friends mentioned today that I'm more upset now over things said than I would be. And and I feel like it's almost as if like I've come to the realization as, why am I making excuses for people? It's 2020, like this thing shouldn't happen. So maybe in that sense, it doesn't roll off my back as much as it used to. And I'm interested to know, how did you guys, when you first experienced an incident, how did you deal with it? And even before that, were you prepared for it?
My first proper encounter was when I was quite young. I was like, I would say, I was still in primary school, I think. Yeah, I was quite young. It was like a boy in my street that we were friends. Like, we just used to like play outside together all the time. But then I think we had an argument that day, and he just spewed out the word, the N-word, and I was like my automatic response, I hit him back. Like, I hit him, and I was like, you can't say that word. But like, when I was younger, I didn't really understand the depth of it. But it's like I knew enough to know that you should not use that word on somebody that's black, because it's not the right word to use. It's a very like insensitive word to use. So I just hit him, and then we didn't talk for like a week. But I think after that, it's like, I think I was a bit more defensive, and like I did try to like learn a bit more about it. And like, I think if it did happen again, which hasn't, like I'd obviously wouldn't react in the same way, but I would know how to like calm myself down and just be like, you know what, this person's ignorant. I have no energy to like put into like trying to teach them, or just let them, just leave them as it is and just walk away, because like there's so much you can do. You can beat someone up, you can fight them, you can verbally abuse them as well, but they'll still do it the next day. So it's like, don't waste your energy, just let it go, and and keep moving on.
And Nadia?
Yeah, I really agree with what you said, Mohammed. Like, I have like grown up expecting it just based off seeing other people's like reactions, and like that's actually not okay. That we should be just expecting that in Ireland, because we shouldn't be tolerating that at all. And I think a big thing for me, an eye opener, has been like the conversation about like microaggressions over the last while. And it's just like tick, reading them all. Like, everything's happened to me so many times, and I'm just kind of like, on reflection now, a lot of it was when I was a good bit younger. Like, so many comments on my hair all the time, and like comments on my skin color, and like, where are you really from, so often. Like, I just, kind of in hindsight, I am the same as you. I'm more annoyed now, because I'm like, actually no, like, that wasn't okay. Like, why were random adults just asking me like, where are you really from, like, throughout my whole childhood, or even like random kids? Like, it's not okay. And I think it has been eye-opening to me, and I'm kind of like, okay, I actually let a lot of things go. But not that you want to react really badly to stuff like that, because a lot of the times people don't know, but at the same time, now it's time that people do start knowing that those comments aren't appropriate.
And then I guess for Perry, in terms of sport, do you find that actually sport is one of the best ways that we can actually bring people together and try and eradicate? I know you were saying it's a lot to do with education, but can sport actually bridge that gap?
I think sport is really powerful, but it'd be interesting to see what Gina and Nadia think about this and their experiences within sport in Ireland. But from my point of view, it's a great opportunity for bringing people together. And, particularly when we're young, I know Gina had that bad experience with a friend of hers, but you almost think that maybe that's just something they've heard or seen on TV or something. You almost feel like with kids of a certain age, they haven't made up their minds yet. They'll engage with you, whoever you are. And I guess if you're playing football, then it's, great if you can be on our team if you're good, or it feels like it's a great opportunity sport. And we've seen great things happen, and we know at our soccer fest we could have like 60 different nationalities playing, and embracing each other and celebrating diversity rather than looking at perceived differences. And to us, that's what's important. Like, do you feel sport is, obviously it's great you're major athletes now, but in as teenagers and things, was that kind of useful, did you feel?
Yeah, definitely, 100%. And I think it makes a lot of sense to work on racism from grassroots in sport, definitely, because like it's giving you extra bonding, and it's a different way of getting to know people that you might not have gotten to know. If you had maybe inherent biases, you might not have kind of sat beside them in class if you're younger. But if you're on a team with them and you share success together and you have fun together, then I think it's a great way to kind of get rid of those biases at a really early age. And yeah, as you said, like it definitely does connect people. And I think for me and Gina as well, it gives us, it helps give us a voice, I guess. It helps, like, maybe some people are athletics fans who would have, in Ireland, who would have kind of had certain opinions or whatever, but maybe as they get to know me and Gina and other athletes like us and kind of see our successes, maybe that helps them kind of open their eyes a little bit too.
Yeah, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant that kids will look up to you, something to aspire to, and that obviously takes time for that to come through. But that's the future.
In terms of athletics, would you find that you experience racism as much in athletics, or have you had any experiences?
I think when I've been to competitions, I had a lot of like Eastern European countries and everything, and like sometimes it's like the first time seeing a black person, and like sometimes they'll just laugh, they'll just laugh at you and you're thinking what's funny. So I think it's just stuff like that, and I've definitely experienced that anyways, where people just like, I'll be walking past and just people like maybe Polish people or like people from Czech Republic just laughing, and I'm like, okay, I mean, there's nothing funny about my appearance. So I think in terms of track and just bringing people together, I think like technically it does bring everyone together, but it doesn't always change people's mindset. That's what I've also realized. I can be in the same team as somebody, I'm black, she's white, and we can get the job done. Doesn't mean she's still not going to hate black people the next day. So I think yes, it does bring people together, and it does unify people, and it's great. But it does not necessarily change a person's mindset and how they see other races. That's the only issue, because I can just be like, I don't like white people, or and then I meet a white person that's lovely, but it doesn't mean that I may not, I like that one white person, but it doesn't mean all the white people fit in that same category. So it's like, it is very iffy, that kind of like topic, in terms of if it would work, but it just depends on the person, I think. So you can't really put everyone in the same boat. So yeah.
Obviously, then competing for Ireland, being a black athlete, people will be ignorant enough to say, "Oh, they're like, why are black people representing Ireland, or are they really Irish?" Or how do you deal with comments like that?
There's no way you can really deal with it. You just say, I'm Irish. Like, that's all you can really say. I think if you let it get to you, then you're kind of letting them win in a sense. So you just have to just let it slide, because you just understand they're just not educated enough, because nationality and race, like, it's not the same thing. Like no nationality is defined by one type of look. So it's like, you can't try to say, I don't look Irish, but what does an Irish person look like? Because even then it's like a stereotypical or their standard of an Irish person, so it's like, you can't even try to compare a battle, because there's no point.
Nadia, did your mum prepare you for anything that you may be told, or people might say things to you that you might want to be aware of growing up?
Yeah, well, my dad is from Sudan, and he's lived in a lot of places around the world. So he's definitely experienced a lot of racism throughout his life. And obviously, like, when he came to Ireland first in the early 90s, it probably would have been unusual that he was with, my mom, who's from from Kilkenny. So as well, she works in international education, and so she's kind of had to help students who have had issues there as well. So yeah, she said it to me, and just even from seeing, other Irish athletes competing, there's trolls, there's trolls on every article and stuff. But yeah, it was something she said to me, which is sad. She has to warn me. But I guess you just need to think that the majority are always positive, and it's just so much who cares really. I know it is tough to see, but when the majority are positive, you just need to think about that. It's just some bitter, uneducated person who was never good enough to represent their country in any sport. So I guess I just need to remind myself that.
And then I mean, with Sari, how are you guys sort of bridging that gap then? I know you mentioned that you have these sort of games and things like that, but from where we are now, how do you think we get to, I suppose it's never, I don't think we're ever going to get to a stage where it's fully eradicated, but where do we go from here basically? How do we take the next step?
Yeah, I mean, one of the mad things, just sort of picking up on what Nadia was saying, is that, these people are looking at, let's say, English football matches, obviously not the last few months, but, before that, and following their teams in England or wherever it might be, and, ferociously supporting a black player maybe. And then the next day, they're giving somebody some racist abuse, in Ireland. And that's what I don't get. It seems idiotic, and, I kind of find it pathetic. But there you go. It is around. And it's going to be difficult. I think we all realize that. This idea of, can you change somebody? But I guess Sari is really about creating opportunities to engage with other people, creating opportunities, particularly for people from ethnic minority backgrounds or socially disadvantaged backgrounds, to play sport every week, to go on all sorts of trips around the world as young leaders, as teams, just to give people great experiences. We're also running an employability program at the moment, supported by FedEx Express. And we have a group of about 30 young guys and girls who are, getting help in getting third level education or getting work in the workplace, getting jobs in the workplace. And, it's all being done through sport. I guess, football, soccer is the big one, but we've done quite a bit with athletics over the years, with working with the GAA now. And I think this is going to be very interesting now, what's happened the last few, the brutal killing. In some ways, thank God somebody was there with an iPhone, because if they hadn't been there with an iPhone, and it had just been this man, George Floyd, a black man, has been killed by police, who knows what the story would have been by police. Maybe the news would have gone away in a few days. But the fact that somebody actually filmed this and we could all see it and hear or hear about it in great detail, as something amazing has come out of his death. And I actually think it just feels that there are great possibilities at the moment. And it's I guess it's trying to make the most of that. And not letting it just go away by next month. It's sort of gone, and do we have to wait for another one, another terrible incident to get everybody up again about it?
I actually think, to echo what you said there, George Floyd's death is sort of just a reminder. It's, what we've seen isn't new. It's been going on for centuries. I think the main thing now is just everything's just become more recordable, basically. It's nothing new. It's the same thing over and over again. Yeah. I think even if you look at the Black Lives Movement, it actually began under Barack Obama, and the first "I Can't Breathe" was Eric Garner. And so if you look at these things, we think there's progress, but if you dig deeper, it's the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, it goes round again.
Exactly. So until I guess we start looking at the bigger picture and trying to educate and reshape society, we'll just be spinning our wheels. So I'm actually interested to hear maybe from all three of you to see. Obviously, the conversation has started, which is fantastic, and long may it continue. But what do you think we need to do, and how do you think that maybe the people of Ireland need to think and need to take action to make a difference, to actually make this a tangible change? Because I like to think that Ireland is always at the forefront of making change. I know in South Africa during apartheid, when Nelson Mandela was regarded as a terrorist, Ireland were one of the few to actually support him. So what do you think we can do in this country to lead basically and make a difference?
I would say it first starts at school and changing the curriculum, because I didn't learn anything about Black history. Like till this day, I'm still learning. So I only learned about like white history, about obviously Irish history. I learned about the Nazis, I learned about everything else but Black history. And I think it's just stuff like that needs to be like really put into people's heads, like that we are also part of history. Like, why would you single us out and you have everyone else but us to get it? So I think it starts from there, and like educating children so they understand, and they can, and even though it's horrific, let them know how horrific it is. Let them know, like, because the truth is always going to hurt. So let them actually understand that like people have been through this, and whatever you do or say like is kind of like adding salt to the wound. So I think it is about education from the beginning, and then after that it just progresses in a better way.
And Nadia, anything to add?
Yeah, I completely agree with Gina, and yeah, school is important. But I guess just looking back at school, like, and maybe even just life as a child, maybe in primary school, like how much diversity were we seeing? Kind of like, did our school books show people with different skin colors? Like, you know, did our teachers have different skin colors? Mine certainly didn't. You know, were the TV shows we were watching, did they have like children with different skin colors? And then just the media, I think that's really important as well, just like normalizing it, because, you know, that's how the school looks. So why shouldn't, you know, what the actual Irish classroom now looks like, why shouldn't that be represented, you know, in the media and in kind of children's media? So I think that would really help. And yeah, education in school, because, you know, no child obviously isn't born racist and they're learning it. But like, I think it's safe to say by secondary school, not a lot, but some kids have really, really strongly developed it. And it's kind of like, how can you get in there before that comes out in them?
Well, I totally agree about the education and what Gina was saying about, you know, what about Black history? Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that I noticed very powerful about the SARI workshops is that, you know, our coaches are majority of them from ethnic minority backgrounds. So, you know, a Black guy, a young woman with a hijab, you know, some of them are 18, 19, 20. They've been trained up through SARI Young Leaders Program. And when they go into the playground, you know, you just feel the effect. It's like, oh, there's someone who's a bit like me. You can see in the kids' eyes. That's not something I'm seeing. You know, I think we've got a much smaller proportion of teachers from ethnic minorities than we have of pupils in the country. And so, as Nadia's saying, you know, who do you look to for some sort of role model that you can have some kind of link with? So I think that's very important. And I think another thing, you know, it does ultimately need some kind of serious adult informed leadership, whether that's from government or somewhere. But, you know, we mentioned Nelson Mandela. You look at America now, you know, they're great voices, they're great people, very brilliant people in America, but I don't see a Martin Luther King at the moment. And I guess these people come along once every 50 years or whatever it is, once every couple of generations. You know, and sometimes one person can have an amazing impact, even Obama. And then last thing, I think we all need to work together. I think we need to get as many people together who want to see change and who want to see respect for everyone. And not be fragmented. So the different groups somehow, I'm not exactly sure how we do it, but get everybody together, working on this together.
I definitely agree with you in the sense of the individual leader, but I also think that it's important everyone does their bit. I'd actually like to touch on this. There's this sort of culture that we do have in Ireland that, oh, it's only a laugh, it's only a bit of banter, it's just a joke. Like, people need to, like, I'm only having a laugh, basically. And it's a lot of this lad culture. I wouldn't only say it's only strictly men, but it's like that lad culture that we're just having a laugh. It's funny. I'll throw it into a WhatsApp group. I'll do this. I'll do that. And I can say I've been guilty of it myself. When you think you think it's funny, but you don't realize the actual effect it has. Like, say for myself, with, say, I have a lot of white friends, and I'd make a joke about maybe brown people or Muslims or whatever, and I think I don't realize the actual effect it can have, that they might think, okay, it's actually okay to say this, or it's actually okay to have a laugh, and they might go on, like, for me it's fine, but they might go on to say it to someone else, and that actually is not okay. With this whole thing that's going on, I've actually reflected on that. Okay, that's actually not okay. And those kind of things, I think, say your parents, if they say something, if your friend says something, you need to speak out, and you need to actually say, you know what, that's not cool, you shouldn't be saying that, because these small things build up to, like I said, the disease. This is the subconscious bias that we build up, which make the overall disease that leads to the symptoms of police brutality or things like that. But I'd be interested to see what you guys think of that.
I completely agree as well with that, because I think a lot of people have this whole like light-hearted banter kind of thing, but like it's not, you can't be light-hearted about something that is a very sensitive topic. There's no banter to it. Like, I think people try to, like, make it seem less than it actually is, but like, it's a big deal. And I think as long as like you point stuff out to people, let them know, okay, that's too far, like, I think they'll understand better, because it's allowing them to say those things that then like makes them feel like they can just say anything they want to say. Like, oh, my other black friend said I can say it. Well, I'm not the same person. Like, I mean, I don't like it, so I don't want you to say it to me, because I'm not that black friend. So it's kind of like, you just have to, yeah, just stop them before it actually gets far, because prevention is better than cure. No, cure, yeah, prevention is better than actually getting the disease. So yeah, so that's just stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. Like, thinking back to school, especially, like, there's very little really angry racism I can remember, like, lashing out, kind of bullying specifically to one person racism in my school. But like, oh my god, the amount of comments, the amount of jokes, that's what it is. Like, that is racism. It's not anything else. It's not banter. It's racism, and it will then manifest into ugly acts, maybe like of abuse or something like that in future in those people possibly. So we need to stop it there. And I'm kind of looking back at school, like, wishing I kind of stood up to more things and said more and just didn't stay silent. But I think we're all reflecting now, as Mohammed said. So I think going forward, a lot of people have realised, no, staying silent isn't enough. So we just need to call it out and just make whoever says the joke uncomfortable, rather than the person who's the brunt of the joke feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. I guess I don't want to keep you guys too long, because I know it's probably been a very long day. But just to finally, if you have any final words, maybe for someone who is, like you're saying, when you were younger, you were afraid to speak out.
Well, I guess our feeling is there should be zero tolerance for any kind of racism. And yeah, definitely let's call people out. Maybe give them a chance if they're young, but ultimately zero tolerance. And I think that there probably needs to be, Nadia's talking about schools, and it must have been very difficult, however much you wanted to say something, because you're in a minority. And so what's the outcome of that? If you already spoke your mind when you're a young kid or a teenager, what's the outcome of that? So I think there need to be more supports in schools. And I don't think there's been enough training of teachers to deal with these situations. So that needs to be improved. But I really think as a nation, it should just be zero tolerance. It's the only way forward. You can't let even young kids who might not really know what they're saying get away with it. You gotta just stop it in its tracks.
I think if anyone feels uncomfortable or feels like they shouldn't say anything, I think it's a case of you have rights as well. The same way they had the right to say, you have the right to say something back. So don't ever belittle yourself or make yourself feel smaller because you feel like it's a controversial thing, or they might get hurt because they hurt you. And I think it's good to express that they hurt you and that what they said was not right. So I think people just should never feel ashamed about it or never feel worried. Just say it how it is, and then at least the truth is coming out now. So whether they get offended by it or not, at least you've said your piece and you don't have any grudges. You're not holding anything against them. So yeah.
And finally, Nadia.
Yeah, definitely. I would kind of echo that. Like, it's for the greater good. It's what you should be doing. It might be uncomfortable, but do it anyway. And we all kind of know silence isn't cutting it anymore. It's not enough. So it is going to be awkward, but we'll call it out. And actually, I have seen, like, I can't remember who the player was, but I think I've read maybe one or two articles where a referee has just ignored the comment because they felt like if the N-word was used on the pitch in a GA match, then a referee has just ignored it. And like, that to me is, I'm sure he was just so uncomfortable at the whole thing that he just felt he couldn't address it. But like, that's ridiculous. We can't accept that. So I think, adults need to kind of realise that, it might be uncomfortable, but yeah, it is their job to lead kids, and to see that in school would be, and I guess on the pitch as well, would really lead the way for kids.
There's been too much of that going on over the years, of referees not being able to, stamp authority on a situation and call it out.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy. I was literally mind blown reading that.
Yeah, and it's happened a lot in Ireland, across amateur games and professional games, and that they haven't really been trained properly, and then they don't know how to do it, and a lot of them are just sort of ignoring it in case something flares up, and they're being weak about it.
Funny enough, you say that. Actually, I know this is off topic, but a lot of the incidents that I would have experienced would have actually been on the football pitch, and I would agree that a lot of the referees are weak and don't actually want to deal with that kind of thing. Like I said earlier, when I was a kid, things like that used to roll off my back because I almost justified it as normal to be called things, and the fact that referees did nothing about it almost solidified that. And then I'd almost be making excuses for people, and now I'm like, why did I do that? I shouldn't have accepted it, and it doesn't make sense. Like, why am I making excuses for these people, basically? Anyway, here's hoping the fact that you guys and so many others are brave enough to talk about this will encourage people to educate themselves and self-reflect. So thank you guys for speaking out and being brave. Hopefully these conversations can spiral on to destroy the disease that is racism. I mean, I didn't choose to be brown, so-and-so didn't choose to be white or didn't choose to be black. I was born that way. I also have big ears, but to hate me because of that is kind of sad, really. Surely it's how you treat people and how you contribute to society is how you should be judged. That said, thank you guys again very much for your time.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you.